Arrogant black belt attacks woman. During class instantly regrets it. The dojo was filled with the quiet hum of discipline. Wooden floors shone under the morning light streaming through tall windows, and students stood in neat rows waiting for instruction. The air smelled faintly of sweat and polished wood, a scent familiar to anyone who had spent long hours training. At the front stood Master Ito, a man of quiet presence whose reputation for fairness and wisdom had drawn students from far beyond the city. Among those students was Marcus, a black belt with skill but little humility. He moved with sharpness and pride, but beneath his polished kicks and perfect stances there was arrogance. Marcus believed rank made him untouchable. His words carried condescension, his corrections to others were sharp, and his laughter often carried at the expense of someone else's mistake. Many had noticed, but few dared to confront him. That day, a new face appeared on the mat. Her name was Alana. She was not dressed in a crisp white GI, but in a simple blue shirt and sweatpants. She looked slightly nervous as she bowed at the edge of the mat. Her movements were humble, but her eyes carried determination. She had been saving for months to join the dojo. To her, martial arts were not about rank or proving superiority. They were about self-respect, resilience, and strength. "Welcome," Master Ito said, motioning her forward. "You may observe today and participate when ready." But Marcus's smirk cut through the calmness. "She does not even belong here," he muttered loudly enough for nearby students to hear. "This is not a class for beginners who think they can fight after watching a movie." His words dripped with arrogance. Some students glanced nervously at Master Ito, but the teacher did not respond. He believed that character revealed itself without him needing to interfere. Alana heard the remark. It stung, but she bowed respectfully and took her place at the side. She had grown up with people underestimating her. She knew this feeling too well. It was the same feeling she had when teachers doubted her potential, when co-workers overlooked her, and when strangers assumed she was not capable. She had joined the dojo not only to learn self-defense but also to reclaim her voice. When the warm-up began, Alana followed every move carefully. Her push-ups were shaky, her kicks were not sharp, but her spirit was steady. Marcus watched her with a smile that was not kind. He whispered to another advanced student, "She will not last a week." But Alana ignored him, focusing instead on the rhythm of the exercises, reminding herself that progress was not about impressing others, but about staying true to herself. As the class continued, Master Ito paired students for drills. To the surprise of many, he motioned for Marcus to train with Alana. The room grew quiet. Some thought it was unfair. Others believed it was intentional. Master Ito had seen arrogance before, and he knew it was only corrected through experience. Marcus raised his eyebrows. "Are you serious, Master? She cannot even keep her balance." Master Ito's eyes remained calm. "A true black belt guides, not humiliates." The words carried weight, but Marcus bowed quickly and turned toward Alana with a smile that held no kindness. He whispered, "I will go easy on you. Try not to embarrass yourself." Alana's throat tightened. She had heard similar words before, at work, in life, even within her own family. People telling her she was not ready, not enough, not capable. But this time she was determined to respond differently. She nodded and prepared for the drill. The exercise began with simple blocking and countering techniques. Marcus moved quickly, his strikes sharp, but his intent was not to teach. It was to intimidate. He tightened his movements, coming closer, pushing harder than necessary. Alana stumbled but kept her focus. She reminded herself of the reason she came: to grow, to learn, to prove something not to others but to herself. But Marcus's arrogance went further. During a break, he leaned closer and whispered, "You should quit before you get hurt. Martial arts are not for everyone. Certainly not for you." Something shifted inside Alana. Her chest rose with a slow breath and she looked at him squarely. Her voice was calm but firm. "I did not come here to quit. I came here to stay." Her words caught him off guard. The students nearby noticed and whispers traveled across the mat. For the first time, Marcus's confidence seemed slightly shaken, though he quickly covered it with a scoff. When Master Ito called for sparring practice, Marcus's smirk returned. "Finally," he said, "time to show what real skill looks like." The room grew tense. Everyone knew sparring was meant to test skills respectfully, not to prove dominance. Yet the way Marcus adjusted his belt and squared his shoulders revealed his true intent. He wanted to humiliate Alana in front of everyone. They bowed as tradition required. Alana's bow was deep, sincere. Marcus's was shallow, impatient. When the match began, Marcus moved aggressively, circling her like a predator. He delivered quick strikes, not full force, but enough to intimidate. Alana struggled to block, her arms shaking, her breath uneven. A few students winced, recognizing that Marcus was crossing a line. Then it happened. In his arrogance, Marcus stepped too close, applying a hold around Alana's neck to demonstrate his superiority. Gasps echoed in the dojo. Alana's face tightened, not with fear, but with resolve. Master Ito's eyes narrowed, but he did not intervene yet. Everyone expected Alana to panic. Instead, she remembered the countless nights she had trained alone in her small apartment, practicing basic escapes she had watched in free tutorials. She shifted her weight, used her shoulder to create space, and stepped out of the hold. The move was not perfect, but it broke his grip. Marcus's eyes widened. For a moment, he was stunned. The room was silent. Every student felt the shift in energy. Alana stood taller, her breath steady, her eyes focused. For the first time, Marcus looked uncertain. Master Ito finally spoke. His voice was calm but carried authority. Skill without respect is weakness. Today, we are not witnessing a beginner against a black belt. We are witnessing character against arrogance. Marcus's face flushed with embarrassment. He had intended to dominate, but instead he had revealed his own flaws. The student's eyes, once filled with admiration for his skill, now carried disappointment. Alana bowed again, not out of mockery, but out of respect for the art. Her body still shook from the adrenaline, but her heart was steady. She had not come to defeat Marcus, yet in her calm defiance, she had won something far greater. The respect of everyone watching, and the reminder that strength is not always about force but about spirit. That day marked the beginning of a journey. For Marcus, it would be a painful lesson. For Alana, it was the first step toward becoming more than she had ever believed possible. The dojo remained silent, but the silence was heavy with realization. The woman Marcus had dismissed was not only capable, she was destined to inspire. The dojo floor was still vibrating with silence after what had just happened. Students whispered quietly among themselves, their eyes shifting between Alana and Marcus. A few were surprised that she had escaped the hold, while others were more stunned by the calm expression she carried afterward. Marcus adjusted his belt sharply, as though tightening it would also tighten his pride. His jaw was stiff, his knuckles white. He bowed quickly, though the bow was nothing more than a gesture to save face. Inside, humiliation was burning through him. He had trained for years, collected trophies, earned belts, and received praise. Yet in a single moment in front of everyone, a woman who was not even wearing a guy had broken free of his dominance. Alana, meanwhile, felt her heart beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. Her arms were trembling, her knees weak, but she held her composure. She refused to let anyone see her exhaustion. What mattered was that she had not backed down. She had faced humiliation, intimidation, and arrogance, and she was still standing. Master Ito stepped forward. His voice, steady and wise, cut through the air like a quiet bell. "Marcus," he said, "you have forgotten the first lesson of martial arts. Respect. Without it, your belt is just cloth, and your skill is empty." The words struck like thunder. The students shifted uncomfortably. Some nodded subtly, agreeing. Others kept their eyes lowered, unwilling to take sides but silently acknowledging the truth. Marcus looked at Master Ito, his pride wounded. "With all due respect, Master, she is not ready for this class. I was only showing her reality." "Reality?" Master Ito repeated softly, his tone sharper than any shout. "Reality is that strength without humility destroys the one who carries it. Reality is that true martial arts protect, not humiliate." Alana bowed slightly, grateful for the words, though she remained quiet. She had no desire to argue. She had learned long ago that dignity was not proven by shouting but by actions. The class ended shortly after. Students lined up to bow out, their voices uniting in the traditional closing words. Yet as they left, whispers followed Alana. Some students looked at her with admiration, others with curiosity. A few even smiled, silently cheering for her. Marcus, however, walked out quickly, his face red, his pride wounded. That night, Alana sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the calluses forming on her hands. She felt sore, tired, but strangely alive. The dojo had been intimidating. Marcus had tried to break her spirit. Instead, he had ignited something stronger inside her. She remembered her life outside the dojo, working long shifts, facing dismissive looks, being told she was not capable of more. The dojo was supposed to be her escape, a place to grow. Yet even here, arrogance had tried to silence her, but she had refused to bow to it. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from one of the students, a woman named Claire. "You were amazing today," the message read. "Don't let Marcus get to you. Everyone saw your strength." Alana smiled faintly. She was not used to encouragement, but those words lit something warm inside her. Maybe she really did belong. Maybe her presence in that dojo had a greater purpose than she realized. The next day, she returned. Her body ached, but her spirit was sharp. When she bowed into the dojo, some students nodded respectfully. Marcus avoided her gaze, though she could feel the tension in the room. Master Ito paired them again, not to humiliate, but to test. This time, however, he gave Marcus a warning glance. The message was clear: respect the training. They began drills. Marcus was still sharp, his movements quick, but something had shifted. His arrogance had been bruised. He no longer laughed openly, though his eyes burned with quiet resentment. Alana noticed, but she kept her focus. She practiced diligently, stumbling at times, but never quitting. As the weeks passed, whispers in the dojo grew into admiration. Alana was not the fastest nor the strongest, but she was consistent. Every mistake became a lesson. Every stumble became a step forward. She stayed after class, practicing alone, her determination unshaken. Students began to notice her resilience. Some even approached her for help with techniques, amazed at her patience and clarity. Marcus, however, struggled. His reputation as the dojo's top student began to fade. The more he tried to prove himself, the more he seemed desperate. His strikes grew sharper, but his humility grew weaker. His frustration leaked into every sparring session. One evening after class, Claire and a few others gathered around Alana. "You inspire us," Claire said simply. "You show us what martial arts truly mean." Alana's eyes widened. She had never been called inspiring before. All her life she had felt overlooked, invisible. Yet here she was, a beginner, and people were seeing her not for her mistakes but for her resilience. Meanwhile, Marcus could hear the whispers. He could see the way students respected Alana, the way Master Ito praised her perseverance. Jealousy gnawed at him. Pride burned hotter than ever. The turning point came 2 months later. The dojo announced an internal demonstration. Students would perform in front of families, friends, and visiting instructors. It was not a competition, but a showcase of discipline and growth. When the list was posted, Marcus saw his name beside Alana's. They were chosen to perform a partnered demonstration. His fists clenched at the sight. To him it was an insult. To Alana it was a chance, not to defeat Marcus, but to show what she had learned. She trained harder than ever, staying late, practicing every detail. Her body bruised, her muscles ached, but she kept going. Claire and others supported her, offering tips, encouragement, and silent cheers. Marcus, meanwhile, plotted differently. He saw the demonstration not as a partnership, but as an opportunity to reclaim his pride. The day of the showcase arrived. Families filled the dojo. Children sat cross-legged, parents leaned forward, and instructors observed quietly. The air buzzed with anticipation. When Alana stepped onto the mat, her heart pounded. She bowed deeply, honoring the moment. Marcus followed, his bow quick, his jaw tight. They began their demonstration. At first, the movements flowed as practiced. Strikes, blocks, counters, sharp and synchronized. The crowd nodded, impressed. But then, Marcus's pride took over. He struck harder, faster, beyond what had been rehearsed. His movements carried aggression, not discipline. Gasps echoed as Alana struggled to keep up, yet instead of crumbling, she adapted. Every aggressive strike became a chance to demonstrate her resilience. Every unexpected move became a test she met with calm. Her breathing stayed steady, her eyes focused. And then the moment came. Marcus lunged aggressively, trying to end the demonstration with dominance. But Alana, drawing from every lesson, every late-night practice, shifted her stance, redirected his energy, and sent him off balance. The dojo fell silent. Marcus stumbled, caught himself, but the message was clear. The crowd erupted into applause, not for his aggression, but for her composure. Master Ito rose. "This," he said, his voice echoing through the room, "is martial arts. Not pride, not arrogance, but discipline, respect, and courage." Marcus lowered his head, shame washing over him. Alana bowed deeply once more, not to humiliate Marcus, but to honor the art. For her, the demonstration was never about defeating him. It was about proving to herself, and to everyone watching, that resilience speaks louder than arrogance. That day, the dojo's respect shifted permanently. Marcus's pride had broken. Alana's spirit had risen, and everyone knew the story of the arrogant black belt and the determined woman was just beginning. The applause from the demonstration still echoed in Alana's memory long after the dojo emptied that night. She walked home slowly, her body aching but her heart light. For the first time in years, she felt seen. Not for her mistakes, not for what people thought she could not do, but for her courage to stand firm when everything was stacked against her. Her phone buzzed again with messages, congratulations from Claire and other students. Some even wrote things like, "You reminded me why I started training in the first place." Alana read them with a quiet smile, humbled that her persistence had touched others. But for Marcus, that night had been bitter. He replayed the stumble over and over in his head, feeling the humiliation like a wound. The respect that once followed him everywhere in the dojo was shifting. Students no longer looked at him as the untouchable leader. Instead, they glanced toward Alana, who had become a symbol of resilience. His pride screamed that he needed to reclaim control. The next class revealed the change. Students surrounded Alana, asking questions, seeking advice, and even requesting to partner with her during drills. Marcus stood on the side, watching silently. His fists clenched, his pride bruised, but inside him, something unfamiliar was stirring, a faint whisper that perhaps Master Ito's words were true. Master Ito, always observant, addressed the class with a story. Once, he began, a great warrior believed his strength was enough to command respect. But strength without humility became his weakness. It was not until he bowed to his pride that he became truly strong. Remember this, our greatest opponent is often not outside us, but inside us. Every student listened carefully. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Alana, however, let the words sink deeply into her heart. She had faced her opponent, both Marcus and her own doubts, and she had stood her ground. Weeks passed. Alana grew sharper in her techniques. Her punches found rhythm. Her stances grew stronger and her escapes smoother. She still made mistakes, but she no longer feared them. Each error became a teacher. Her journey was no longer about proving Marcus wrong. It was about proving herself right. One evening, Claire approached her after class. "Do you realize," she said softly, "how many people you inspire? Some of us were close to quitting. Watching you, we remembered why we came. You make us believe we can rise too." Alana's eyes filled with quiet gratitude. She had never been called inspiring before. She had spent much of her life being underestimated, told she was not enough. Now, in a place where she had once felt out of place, she was becoming a source of hope. But not everyone celebrated her rise. Marcus grew more distant. His practice fueled less by love of the art and more by the fear of losing his place. His movements became harsh, his temper short. He still carried skill, but the respect he once commanded was fading, replaced by whispers of disappointment. Master Ito watched carefully. He knew that Marcus was at a crossroads. Pride could destroy him or humility could rebuild him, but the choice had to be his. The real test came when the dojo prepared for an open tournament, an event where schools from across the region would gather. Students buzzed with excitement and fear. For many, it was their first chance to demonstrate their training before a larger audience. When the names were announced, Alana's heart skipped. Her name was on the list. She would compete alongside others, including Marcus. Gas filled the room. Some doubted she was ready. Others cheered quietly for her courage. Marcus's eyes narrowed. To him, this was the chance to reclaim what he had lost. The weeks leading to the tournament were intense. Alana pushed herself harder than ever. She stayed after class, drilling movements until her body ached. She sought advice from Claire, from other students, even from Master Ito, who reminded her gently, "A fight is not about defeating the person in front of you. It is about defeating the fear within you." Those words became her anchor. Every time doubt whispered that she did not belong, she remembered, fear was her true opponent. The night before the tournament, she sat by her window, staring at the city lights. Her hands trembled slightly, not from weakness but from anticipation. She whispered to herself, "I have already won. I did not quit. I am still here." The day arrived. The gymnasium was buzzing with energy. Students in crisp uniforms, coaches calling instructions, families cheering from the stands. Alana's stomach tightened, but she held her breath steady. When her name was called, she stepped onto the mat. Her opponent was taller, faster, and clearly more experienced. But Alana remembered Master Ito's words. She bowed deeply, then raised her guard. The match began. The opponent moved aggressively, testing her balance, striking with precision. Alana stumbled at first, but each time she rose. Each mistake she turned into adjustment. Each strike she absorbed, she met with resilience. Minutes stretched like hours. The crowd cheered louder with every exchange, and though Alana did not win that match, she left the mat with her head held high, the applause filling her heart with victory. She had not come to collect medals. She had come to prove to herself that she belonged. Meanwhile, Marcus's match followed. He entered the mat with his usual confidence, but something was missing. His strikes were sharp, but his focus scattered. He fought with aggression, not clarity, and in front of everyone he lost. The silence that followed was heavier than applause. For Marcus, it was not just a defeat on the mat, it was the collapse of the pride he had built his identity upon. After the tournament, Alana approached him quietly. "Marcus," she said softly, "you are strong. But strength is not just skill. It is also respect. I hope you remember that." Her words, spoken without malice, pierced deeper than any loss. For the first time, Marcus did not feel anger in her presence. He felt something else. Shame, yes, but also the faintest flicker of humility. That night, as students celebrated, Marcus sat alone, his head low. Master Ito approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You still have a choice," the master said gently. "Your pride can bury you or it can teach you. Which will it be?" Marcus did not answer right away. But in his silence, the seed of change had been planted. For Alana, the tournament was not the end, but another beginning. She had entered the dojo as an outsider. She now stood as a symbol of what perseverance could do. And though her journey was far from over, one thing was clear. She had earned respect, not by demanding it, but by embodying it. The story of the arrogant black belt and the woman who refused to quit was becoming more than a lesson in martial arts. It was becoming a reminder that in every battle, inside or outside the dojo, the greatest victory is the one we win within ourselves. Marcus had not been himself since the tournament. His usual swagger was gone, replaced with silence and heavy eyes. Students who once looked to him for guidance now drifted toward Alana, asking her about techniques, endurance, and even life lessons she never imagined she could give. Inside, Marcus wrestled with feelings he had never faced before. Humiliation, yes, but also emptiness. He had always tied his worth to winning, to being the best. Now, after his loss, he felt like he had nothing left to stand on. His black belt, once a symbol of pride, now felt like a weight pressing against his waist. Alana noticed his change, but she kept her distance. She had no desire to gloat. Her focus remained on her own journey, growing stronger, calmer, more disciplined. She spent hours after class working on forms, refining her breathing, perfecting small movements that most people ignored. For her, the dojo had become more than a training hall. It was a sanctuary, a place where she was slowly rebuilding herself from the inside out. One evening, as class ended, Master Ito gathered the students. His voice carried the same calm authority as always. "Our dojo," he began, "is not built on competition. It is built on community. We rise together, or we fall divided. And right now, I see division." The students looked at each other, uneasy. They knew what he meant. Marcus sat apart, isolated, his pride keeping him distant. Alana sat quietly, her eyes lowered, though everyone knew her presence had changed the balance of the dojo. "Tomorrow," Master Ito continued, "we will train differently. No belts, no ranks. Everyone will wear the same color, the same plain uniform. We will remind ourselves that humility is the foundation of strength. The announcement rippled through the group. Some nodded in agreement, others looked surprised. Marcus clenched his jaw. To him, the belt was everything. To strip it away, even for a day, felt like stripping away his identity. The next day, students arrived in plain white uniforms. There were no colored belts, no visible ranks. Everyone stood equal on the mat. For some, it was liberating. For Marcus, it was suffocating. Without his belt, without the symbol of his superiority, he felt exposed. Training began with group drills. Alana paired with Claire, guiding her patiently. Her instructions were calm, her encouragement genuine. Around them, students laughed softly, supporting one another, the atmosphere lighter than usual. But Marcus stood rigid, his movements sharp, his eyes burning. Master Ito observed quietly before approaching him. "Why do you fight the uniform?" he asked gently. "Because it erases what I have earned," Marcus snapped. "It does not erase it," Ito replied calmly. "It reveals what remains when symbols are gone. If your strength disappears without a belt, was it ever true strength?" The words sank into Marcus's chest like a stone. He turned away, unwilling to admit the truth, but deep inside something cracked. The breaking point came during sparring. Without ranks, partners were paired randomly. To Marcus's frustration, he was paired with a student who had barely been training for 3 months. The student stumbled often, his strikes weak, his stance unsteady. Marcus grew impatient. "Again," he barked. "No, again, do it properly." His voice echoed harshly, drawing stares. The student's face flushed, his eyes lowered in embarrassment. Before Marcus could shout again, Alana stepped forward. "Enough," she said quietly. Her voice was not angry but firm. "We are all learning. You do not have the right to break someone's spirit." The dojo fell silent. Marcus turned, his pride flaring. "And who are you to tell me what to do? You are still a beginner." Alana's gaze did not falter. "Maybe I am a beginner, but I know this. Humiliating others does not make you stronger. It makes you weaker. That is not what martial arts is about." The words cut deeper than any strike. Around them, students nodded subtly, their respect for Alana growing stronger. Marcus looked at their faces and realized with horror that the respect he had once commanded had shifted completely. He stormed out of the dojo that night, his footsteps heavy, his chest burning with anger and shame. But as he walked through the quiet streets, her words echoed in his head. Humiliating others does not make you stronger. It makes you weaker. For the first time, Marcus questioned everything. That night, he sat alone in his apartment, staring at his black belt hanging on the wall. It no longer looked like an achievement. It looked like a mirror reflecting his arrogance. He thought of Master Ito's words, of Alana's resilience, of the applause she had earned through humility, and he felt something he had not felt in years, tears burning in his eyes. The next morning, Marcus returned to the dojo before dawn. The mats were empty, the air still. He bowed at the entrance, his movement slower, more deliberate. He stood in the silence, hearing only his own breath, and for the first time he admitted quietly, "I have been wrong." When class began later that day, Marcus was different. His strikes were still sharp, but his voice was quieter. He no longer barked orders, no longer mocked mistakes. He even bowed more deeply to his partners, though the humility was awkward at first, like learning a new movement. Alana noticed the change. She did not say anything, but she felt it. Slowly, the walls Marcus had built were beginning to crack. Weeks passed, and the dojo began to heal. Students laughed more freely, encouraged one another, and supported each other without fear of judgment. And though Marcus still wrestled with his pride, he began to step toward something new: respect. One evening, after a long class, he approached Alana. His voice was low, uncertain. "You were right," he said simply. Alana looked at him surprised. His eyes held no arrogance, only sincerity. She nodded gently. "It was never about being right. It was about remembering why we train. For Marcus, those words were both painful and freeing. He realized then that his journey was not over. It was just beginning, just like hers. That night, as students left the dojo, Master Ito watched them with quiet satisfaction. He knew the hardest lessons were never about kicks or punches. They were about pride, humility, and the courage to change. And in that dojo, among those students, a once arrogant black belt and a once doubted woman were slowly rewriting not only their own stories, but the spirit of everyone around them. The dojo had settled into a new rhythm. Where once Marcus's arrogance had filled the room like a shadow, now there was space for something lighter, encouragement, laughter, and true growth. Students who once feared his sharp words now practiced without hesitation. And at the center of this change was Alana, not because she demanded attention, but because she quietly embodied resilience. Marcus felt the shift every day. Each bow felt heavier. Each drill revealed how far he had strayed from the true path. But instead of fueling his pride, the realization began to humble him. He started to see that strength was not about domination, but about presence. Not about being the loudest, but about being the most consistent. One evening, Master Ito gathered Marcus after class. The room was empty, the mats quiet under their feet. "Marcus," the master said softly, "do you know why I paired you with Alana from the beginning?" Marcus lowered his eyes. "To punish me?" Ito shook his head gently. "To save you. I saw your skill, but I also saw your arrogance. And arrogance destroys faster than any opponent. Alana was not placed against you. She was placed beside you to teach you what you had forgotten." The words struck Marcus with truth. He thought back to the day Alana first entered the dojo, how he had mocked her, how he had tried to humiliate her. Now he realized she had given him something no trophy or medal ever had, the mirror to see himself clearly. That night, Marcus could not sleep. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, remembering every moment he had chosen pride over respect. The faces of students he had belittled haunted him. He whispered to himself, "I have been a fool." The next morning he arrived early, the first one on the mat. When Alana walked in, she was surprised to see him practicing quietly, his movements slower, more deliberate. He bowed deeply to her, a gesture that held no arrogance. She returned the bow, sensing the sincerity. "Alana," he said softly, his voice steady but humbled, "I owe you an apology. I treated you with disrespect. I treated many people with disrespect, and I regret it." She looked at him for a long moment, searching his eyes for signs of insincerity, but all she saw was honesty, raw and heavy. She nodded. "Apology accepted. But what matters is not what you say, it is what you do next." Marcus nodded slowly. He knew she was right. Words could not undo the damage, but actions could build something new. From that day on, Marcus changed. He no longer barked at students. Instead, he encouraged them. When beginners stumbled, he offered patient corrections instead of sharp remarks. When someone succeeded, he applauded genuinely. The transformation was not instant. Pride still tugged at him, but each day he chose humility. It grew stronger. The dojo noticed. Students who once avoided him began seeking his guidance again, this time without fear. And though he still wore his black belt, he carried it differently, not as a crown but as a responsibility. Meanwhile, Alana's journey deepened. She continued to train relentlessly, her progress astonishing even herself. She began assisting Master Ito with beginners, guiding them with patience and understanding. Her presence became a source of comfort for new students, especially those who walked in feeling unsure just as she once had. One evening, a young girl named Maya joined the dojo. She was shy, her eyes cast downward, her steps hesitant. Alana recognized the fear immediately. It was the same fear she had carried on her first day. She approached Maya gently, offering a warm smile. "You belong here," Alana whispered, guiding her through the first movements. Maya's eyes lit with gratitude. From that moment, she followed Alana closely, not just as a student, but as someone searching for hope. Marcus noticed this too. He watched how Alana lifted others, how she gave without needing recognition. He realized that this, more than any medal or tournament, was true power. The ability to inspire, to lift others higher than yourself. As months passed, word of the dojo spread. Families brought their children not just to learn self-defense, but to learn resilience, discipline, and respect. And often when they spoke of the dojo, they spoke of Alana, the woman who had once been doubted, who now symbolized courage. One afternoon, as class ended, Master Ito gathered everyone. His eyes shone with quiet pride. This dojo has always been about more than fighting. It is about becoming better humans. And today I see that clearly. Alana, Marcus, you have both taught us something important. One of you showed us the courage to rise when underestimated. The other showed us the courage to change when pride had taken root. Both are victories, the students applauded. Alana bowed humbly, her heart swelling. Marcus bowed too, tears stinging his eyes. For the first time he felt not ashamed but grateful. That evening, as the dojo emptied, Marcus lingered. He approached Alana again, his voice steady. You once told me what matters is what I do next. I want to do better, not just for myself, but for others. Will you help me? Alana smiled softly. Of course. We rise together, remember? The words settled between them like a promise. Over the next weeks, Marcus and Alana trained side by side, not as rivals, but as partners. They pushed each other, corrected each other, and grew together. Marcus found himself learning from her resilience, while Alana learned from his technical precision. Their partnership became a model for the dojo, strength meeting humility, resilience meeting redemption. Outside the dojo, Alana's influence grew as well. She was invited to speak at local community centers, sharing her story of perseverance. She told children and adults alike about the importance of never giving up, of facing arrogance with dignity, of finding strength within. Her words carried weight because they came from lived truth. Marcus often accompanied her quietly, standing in the back, humbled but proud to witness her journey. He no longer needed to be the center of attention. Watching her inspire others became its own reward. One evening after a long session, Marcus confessed something to her. You know, he said softly, I used to think being feared was the same as being respected. I was wrong. Respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned. You taught me that. Alana looked at him with quiet kindness. And you taught me something too. That even those who stumble in pride can rise again if they choose humility. They both smiled, a silent understanding passing between them. Their journeys were different, but they had intersected in a way that had transformed them both. By then, the dojo had become more than a training hall. It had become a family, a place where people not only learned martial arts but also discovered themselves. And at the heart of it were two people who had once stood on opposite sides, an arrogant black belt and a determined woman, now united by respect, humility, and courage. For Marcus, the awakening was not complete. Pride still whispered sometimes, reminding him of old habits, but he now had the strength to silence it. And for Alana, the awakening was just beginning. Her journey was not only about martial arts anymore, it was about becoming a voice of hope for anyone who had ever been doubted. The story that had begun with arrogance and humiliation was transforming into something far greater, and everyone who stepped into that dojo knew it. They were witnessing not just training, but transformation. Months had passed since the tournament, and the dojo had become brighter, warmer. Students trained with more laughter, less fear. Parents whispered with admiration about the way the dojo shaped not only strong fighters but strong people. Alana was at the heart of it all. She had gone from nervous beginner to assistant teacher, guiding others with a patience that touched every soul. She taught more than stances and punches. She taught resilience, the kind that rises even when everyone doubts you. Marcus had changed too. The once arrogant black belt was no longer feared. He was respected again, but in a different way. He bowed more deeply, listened more carefully, and corrected others gently. He had not lost his skill. He had gained humility. Yet deep inside he still battled himself. The ghost of his old pride whispered at night, asking him if he was truly different, or just pretending. The chance to prove it came unexpectedly. One Saturday, the dojo hosted a community workshop open to the public. Families arrived, curious children lined up, and even adults who had never trained before stepped onto the mat. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Master Ito divided the students into groups, each led by senior practitioners. Alana guided the beginners, showing them simple movements. Marcus was assigned to demonstrate advanced techniques. The hall was full, the energy high. But in the crowd a man entered who carried himself with sharp confidence. His name was Victor. He was a black belt from another dojo, known for his aggressive style and his ego. Word spread quickly. He had come not to learn but to test. "Show us what this dojo is really about," Victor said loudly, his voice dripping with challenge. His eyes landed on Marcus. I heard you were the top here." "Prove it." The room fell silent. Students froze. Parents leaned forward and children held their breath. Marcus felt his chest tighten. In the past, this was the moment he lived for. Public challenges, opportunities to dominate, to show superiority. But now everything inside him hesitated. He bowed calmly. "This dojo is not about proving who is better," he said. "It is about growing together." Victor laughed harshly. "Sounds like an excuse. Come on, black belt. Show me if you still have teeth." Whispers filled the room. All eyes were on Marcus. The old Marcus would have rushed forward, eager to crush the challenge. But the new Marcus knew this was not just about him. It was about everything the dojo stood for. Master Ito's gaze was steady, giving no instruction. He wanted to see what Marcus would choose. Marcus took a slow breath. He stepped forward onto the mat. "Very well," he said, his tone calm. "We will spar. But remember, martial arts is not for humiliation. It is for respect." The spar began. Victor attacked aggressively, his strikes sharp, his movements fueled by ego. Marcus blocked, moved, and countered, but with restraint. He had the skill to dominate, but he chose control. He matched Victor's aggression with calm precision, refusing to be drawn into arrogance. The students watched in awe. Alana's heart pounded as she stood at the side, knowing this was Marcus's ultimate test, not of strength, but of humility. Victor grew frustrated. "Fight me properly," he shouted, striking harder. Marcus shook his head. "I am fighting properly. You confuse anger with power." The words struck louder than any kick. The room went quiet. Marcus then demonstrated a flawless counter, redirecting Victor's energy and pinning him harmlessly to the mat. He did not hurt him. He did not humiliate him. He simply released and bowed. "This is martial arts," Marcus said softly. "Control, respect, discipline." The crowd erupted in applause. Parents clapped, children cheered, and students looked at Marcus with admiration, not for his victory but for his restraint. Victor stood, his pride bruised. He looked around, realizing the crowd was not impressed by his aggression but by Marcus's humility. He lowered his gaze and bowed stiffly, muttering, "I underestimated you." Then he left quietly. The dojo was buzzing with pride. For many students, especially the young ones, it was the most powerful lesson they had ever seen. Strength was not in overpowering others, but in controlling oneself. Alana approached Marcus afterward. Her eyes glistened with emotion. "That was your moment," she whispered. "You could have destroyed him. Instead, you showed us all what true strength looks like." Marcus bowed to her. "You were right, Alana. Respect matters more than pride. You reminded me of that." Master Ito gathered everyone. His voice rang clear. "Today you saw the heart of martial arts. Not in victory or defeat, but in character. Marcus, you have grown. Alana, you have inspired. Together you remind us all of the path we walk." The applause filled the dojo once more. That night, Marcus sat quietly outside the dojo, staring at the stars. Alana joined him, sitting at his side. For a long moment, they said nothing. The silence was peaceful. Finally, Marcus spoke. "For years, I thought my black belt meant I had reached the top. But today I realized it was only the beginning. Real strength is not what hangs around your waist. It is what you carry in your heart." Alana smiled softly. "And hearts can always grow stronger." The two of them sat together, no longer as rivals, but as companions on the same journey. One who had fallen and risen again, and one who had refused to give up despite doubt. Inside the dojo, their story had already become legend. Parents would tell their children, "Remember the woman who never gave up. Remember the black belt who chose humility." The ultimate test had come, and both had passed, not by conquering others, but by conquering themselves. The dojo had become more than a training hall. It was a place where stories were born, where strength met humility, where doubts turned into confidence. And at the heart of it all were Alana and Marcus, two people who had started on opposite sides yet walked a path that had transformed them both. Alana's influence reached beyond the mats. Parents often stopped her after class to thank her for the patience she showed their children. Young girls who once walked in shy and unsure now trained boldly, saying, "I want to be like Alana." She smiled whenever she heard it, not out of pride, but out of gratitude. For every doubt she had carried, for every time she had been underestimated, she now stood as proof that resilience could rewrite anyone's story. Marcus, too, had changed in ways no one imagined. He was still skilled, still fast, still sharp, but he no longer sought to prove himself through domination. Instead, he mentored quietly, guiding beginners with patience he had once lacked. Students who once feared his criticism now found encouragement in his words. Slowly, respect returned to him. Not the shallow respect of fear, but the deep respect of trust. The dojo's reputation grew. People came from other neighborhoods, drawn by stories of a woman who had defied arrogance and a black belt, who had found humility. Master Ito welcomed them all, his quiet smile reflecting the pride he felt for his students. One evening, Master Ito called Alana and Marcus into his office. The room was simple, wooden shelves filled with books, a single desk, and a small framed photo of his own master. He motioned for them to sit. "You have both changed," Ito said softly, "and because of that, this dojo has changed too. But growth is not meant to be kept. It must be shared." Alana tilted her head. "What do you mean, Master?" "You both have voices now," he said. "People listen to you. They learn from your journey. Do not keep it only within these walls. Share it with the world." The words struck them deeply. Alana felt her heart quicken. She had never thought of herself as a voice for others. Marcus lowered his eyes, humbled that Ito believed he had something worth sharing. The opportunity came sooner than they expected. A local school invited the dojo to speak about discipline, respect, and resilience. Master Ito sent Alana and Marcus. At first they hesitated, both nervous in their own ways. But when they stood before the students, something remarkable happened. Alana told her story honestly. How she had been doubted, underestimated, and even mocked, but how she refused to give up. She spoke about the day she faced Marcus, not to embarrass him, but to prove to herself that resilience mattered more than rank. Marcus followed, his voice quieter but sincere. He admitted his arrogance, how he had let pride blind him, and how he had learned humility through failure. The children listened, their eyes wide, their attention locked. When they finished, the room erupted in applause. Teachers thanked them, students crowded around them, asking questions, seeking advice. In that moment, both Alana and Marcus realized that their journey had become bigger than themselves. Word spread. More schools invited them. Community centers asked them to speak. Even local news featured their story, the black belt who found humility and the woman who refused to quit. The dojo grew busier than ever. Families lined up to enroll their children, inspired by the story that had reached their ears. And with every new face, Alana and Marcus remembered where they had begun. One underestimated, the other arrogant. But the true legacy came not in crowds or applause. It came in the small moments. It came when Maya, the shy young girl Alana had mentored, stood confidently on the mat, leading warm-ups with a proud smile. It came when a boy who had been bullied at school stood tall after class, whispering, "I'm not afraid anymore." It came when Marcus, guiding a beginner through a clumsy form, saw his younger self in the boy's frustration and said softly, "Do not rush. Respect the process. You will get there." One night as the dojo emptied, Marcus and Alana stood side by side at the entrance. The air was cool, the city quiet around them. "Do you ever think about how it started?" Marcus asked, his voice thoughtful. Alana smiled faintly. "Every day. I remember how you tried to humiliate me." Marcus winced, then chuckled softly. "And you remember how you showed me what real strength looks like." They both laughed quietly, not out of mockery, but out of gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. Alana turned serious. "Do you ever regret the way you were?" Marcus thought for a long moment. "Sometimes. But without my mistakes, I would not have learned. Without you, I would not have changed. So no, I do not regret. I am grateful," Alana nodded. "Me too." The two of them bowed to the dojo, a gesture of respect not just to the place but to everything it represented. Inside, the mats lay still, but the walls seemed to echo with the stories that had unfolded there. The story of arrogance, resilience, humility, and transformation. For the students who trained there, the lesson was clear. Strength is not about belts, trophies, or dominance. It is about respect, perseverance, and the courage to change. And for Alana and Marcus, the legacy they left behind was not in the moves they taught, but in the lives they touched. The dojo's story became their story. A story that would live on in every student who walked through those doors, carrying with them the lesson that true strength is never about breaking others down, it is about lifting them up. And so, the woman who had once been doubted, and the black belt who had once been arrogant, became symbols of something greater. Proof that no matter where you begin, with humility and courage you can always rise.